Well, thank you for coming to the first scrap meeting of the year. Um, One second, I'm admitting some more people. Today we have a fairly full agenda already, so we're going to begin with some brief introductions to introduce the scrap members that are here today, and then we'll discuss the old business. So I know all of you already know me. I'm Rachel Fisher, the Member Services Librarian for Technical Services and the CCS Liaison. So today we have all but one scrap member that's here. Brad is not planning to be here. He's from Cary. He is currently on vacation today. So we can begin with introductions. You can introduce yourself, your name, and the library that you work for. So we'll start with the first one on my list, Rachel. And you can unmute yourself and speak. So it looks like Rachel has no microphone, but Rachel is here from Algonquin. Katie?
Hi, Katie Safaris. I'm from Mount Prospect Public Library.
Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Nevins. I'm from Science Benton Public Library.
Adrian?
Hi, Adrian Galindo. I'm at Palatine Public Library.
Jamie? And Jamie posted in the chat. He doesn't have a mic. He is the Material Services Supervisor at Niles. Kathy?
Sorry, didn't realize I was on mute. Kathy Milfight, and I'm at McHenry.
Great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This is going to be a very interesting year. We've got a lot of interesting plans of materials to review. As you could see on our agenda, we're continuing on with our review of old business, the wiki, and there's a new best practices document from OLAC. So the first thing on our agenda today is the old business. I'm just going to share my screen so that everyone can see the agenda. If you don't have it up, one second. So there were two motions that CAM decided they wanted to send back to scrap for more information. So I listed the information on the background from the CAM agenda as well as the CAM opinion that was in the minutes. So the first one was the motion on youth literacy materials. So to briefly summarize the background, Scrap had asked PASS for feedback on it to make sure it wasn't redundant and that they supported adding this as a genre heading. They agreed that it needed to be tightly scoped in order to be applied effectively. Their suggestion was to apply it to materials intended to teach how to read using phonics, science of readings, and teaching concepts, as opposed to content or reading level appropriate materials. So CAM sent this back because they weren't sure of what materials this would actually be applied for. For example, there are like readers that are reading level appropriate materials but are meant to teach someone how to read. And so they also felt that this could potentially be duplicating information that's already in the subject headings. So my question to the scrap members is, what is your opinion on the feedback that CAM requested? And if you feel this should still be something that scrap would want to continue to pursue with CAM as a motion, or if you feel that it's after this information that it's still too redundant and should not be considered a motion anymore.
I think I need an example of a title that this would be applied to, because I'm thinking of like the easy readers that are leveled at like 1, 2, 3. But there was a mention about like phonics. So is this meant to be the books that like talk about sound specifically? I think I need more clarity on that.
Right, that's a good question. Let me see if I can find something. Off the top of my head, I was thinking of a recent series I thought that looks like specific stories, like short stories, but each one was geared towards a phonics topic. So I think that's a good example where I wasn't quite sure if that would be considered a reader or if that would benefit from that heading.
Because what I see happening is, depending on how it's applied, so we have like a shelf location that's like youth easy readers. And so I'm imagining that if this is like very tightly scoped, that some of those will receive that genre heading and others will not. And I wonder how helpful that actually is.
Right. Let me share my screen. I found the title that I was thinking of. So this is one that was recently published. It's a short story called Fix It Foxes. But it's in a series called My First Decodables. So it's phonics related, and each book is on a specific phonics. So they're readers, but it's considered a methodology for teaching reading too at the same time.
Yep, so that is one that we have in our collection, and it's in the Youth Easy Readers shelf location. So just as an example for other people if they're wondering.
I guess I'd say we have the same situation. We have easy reader location, which we already designate with an ER, and then we have a color coding system where we designate the leveling for them. And so those are, intended for teaching or, supporting phonics and reading at lower level. I just don't know what benefit it would get for us because we already have that defined collection.
Tammy, I see you raised your hand.
Yes, so would this differentiate like books that, the easy reader books where it's just simple words and simple sentences from books that are actually designed for the phonetic method and stuff? So even if you had it all in your collection, the easy readers, it might be a little bit more beneficial. I come from a personal standpoint. I had a child with dyslexia. So I know I had to find certain books that were more than just simple words. And it would have been nice for me to be able to find these type of books within an easy reader collection to weed out which ones did and which ones didn't. So I'm assuming that's the purpose.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, the question of redundancy would be that overlapping point where, like this book, where it's a reader, but also a specific methodology. And I wouldn't know how to necessarily apply it.
I guess they
Kathy,
could get both. I'm sorry, I was just gonna say,
It's okay.
I guess they could get both genre headings. I don't know if that would be confusing to people, but.
Kathy, your hand was up.
Yes, I agree it would be hard to determine which materials that heading would be appropriate at. And the question that I'm having then is, does this count for materials geared to an adult audience that say we put in our parent teacher collection, on how to teach your child reading using phonics.
Mhm. From what past suggests, it makes me feel like it is meant to be for teaching materials as opposed to the readers. But trying to identify that might be difficult still. Because even that book has like methodology subject headings. So if you're trying to isolate it to bulk out the subject heading, it would still come up as a methodology.
I wonder if the methodology, though, is just like something as simple as the K sound makes a K sound, like
Right.
maybe not intended for parents, but for children. That's my impression. That's how I read it, is that it is for children, not for parents or teachers. But that I can see how it's kind of ambiguous.
Does it seem kind of confusing that for adult literacy materials, that would be applied to the reading level appropriate material, but youth literacy materials would be applied to teaching materials, not reading level appropriate materials?
That does seem confusing to me.
You're not the only one, Adrian. That confuses me too.
Yeah.
Even knowing that most of the materials we have in our early reader collection are specifically readers, and now we're leveling our readers.
So, given the nature of how confusing this is and the overlapping materials between readers and teaching materials, is Scrap still interested in pursuing this as a motion, or do you feel more inclined to just drop it?
The easiest route would be to drop it, but if we're going to provide benefit to our patrons, then maybe altering it rather than youth literacy materials, youth literacy teaching materials, or something of that nature, so that it's more specific for whoever's reading it what that heading truly means.
Yeah, I agree
That's a
with
good
that.
idea.
And in that example that you had, Rachel, there, I think I saw the subject heading phonic method. Yeah, reading phonic method, juvenile literature. And I don't know if there are other subject headings with methods, other kinds of methods, but maybe a genre heading could capture all those different subject headings under one.
Rachel, this is Jamie.
Jamie, did you say something?
Hello, yes, hi.
I'm having a
Did
hard time
someone...
hearing you.
Okay, how about now? Any
That's a bit
better? Okay, did someone ask for this heading, or are we just trying to define one because we had one for adult?
I had the idea from Waukegan's list of local headings initially, and that's how we came up with the initial discussion. And it's morphed into different versions of those headings since then, and different ideas as we've gotten feedback from past.
Okay, I kind of feel like if someone hasn't asked for it specifically, then maybe it's not worth us trying to create one.
The original subject heading and genre headings were definitely different, and they have shifted to be more specific to different reading levels, as opposed to having like one for literacy materials in general. So that's how we ended up with adult and youth separately. So I don't know if I fully answered your question. I was having trouble hearing you, Jamie. Did that make sense?
I think I don't know. I'm caught. I agree with Jamie that I don't necessarily want to create something that, nobody's asking for to solve a
Right.
problem that doesn't exist yet. So, if the other group, I don't know if it was Pass or Cam, if they want to come up with, the scope that they want to use, I'm fine with that. And we can review it again later. But I think for now, the readers' publications genre heading seems to be doing its job. But yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily coming out of a feeling that I felt that it was a problem that needed to be solved, but potentially a useful heading that was specifically for the adult reading materials that we already have passed the motion for. So it just needed to have a separate one to separate the adult from youth. So it does seem to be like we keep coming up with ways to find that this could be redundant. And I agree that this is probably something that we don't necessarily need to pursue anymore if we're feeling that it's too redundant. And I feel that PASS was only asked for their opinion to make sure it wasn't redundant to them as well. So they were okay to have it if we felt we also wanted to have it with the limited scope. So I feel that if everyone's okay, maybe we should just drop this one then.
That's actually what I was going to suggest. So.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next one. And that is the issue of Gulf of Mexico and Mount Denali. Subject headings changing to Gulf of America and Mount McKinley. One second. I need to make sure I put on Do Not Disturb because I saw a message pop up. Okay. So the main concern from CAM was that they wanted to send it back to scrap, given that we have historically not used local headings for other types of changes, like geographic headings, such as Myanmar instead of Burma. I'm not sure why they haven't switched it to Myanmar yet, other than for political reasons, but they usually switch headings to the one that the country goes with. So I did get a list of the recent searches executed with those terms. And it was a very small amount. So it was much less than 70. So there's only 64 searches that were executed with those terms since 2018. So it's definitely not a priority for research right now, given these small amounts. Some were clicking on specific headings, and some were just searching for words. So, what is your opinion on continuing to pursue this change or this local heading for continuing to have Gulf of Mexico and Mount Denali in the records?
My personal opinion is that we started pursuing it because of how quickly the push to change Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America came through. It was unlike other subject headings, like we're talking about Myanmar and Burma, where nothing happened with those, even though those names officially changed. And because we weren't, as a profession, active about that, now there's this push because it's on our own boundaries or within our own nation that we're moving forward with these changes at a rapid speed that I don't think our profession has seen from Library of Congress regarding other subject heading updates. So, we were trying to just be a step ahead of that and the outcry that was happening. And I'll admit, it doesn't make a difference to me one way or another, as long as they're in the See Also headings, as long as someone who is searching Gulf of Mexico gets a hit, that they're able to find something, that we're not having to do a lot of extra cataloging work to pepper keywords into the bib record that is the Gulf of Mexico, or you get the point. So, I mean, for me, having the 691s in there, I don't think we should pursue it. But if we do choose to pursue it, I do think that's the way to go, because they can be flipped back as necessary if they stay in that form of their authorized form prior to. They can, certainly as a 691 be whatever we want them to be. But in that case, I honestly think we should be pursuing having them for more than just the Gulf of America. It should be for the subject headings for Myanmar, that it be Myanmar, not Burma. So does that make sense?
Yes, Adrian, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I take their point about Myanmar versus Burma. And why should we make this change to one subject heading when we're not doing it for the other? But I do think, as Kathy said, it kind of behooves us, I think, to respond to things in real time. People aren't debating the Myanmar Burma thing, as much as people are talking still about the Gulf of America change. It's not a hot button issue here in our community. So I do think it's worth considering still. I don't think that we should say, well, just because we're not changing these others, we shouldn't change these new ones as well. Yeah. And also, yeah, I did have a question. So I forget, do our authority records, are those See Also references like searchable? Like if I search for Gulf of Mexico as a subject heading, I don't think Gulf of America is going to come up, because I didn't think that those 4XX fields were indexed. Is that not correct?
So let's see. It's been a while since I've tried searching in a browse search to see how that appears. Yes, we do have See Also headings that do come up when we click on a heading.
Okay, good. For some reason, I was thinking that did not exist.
Rachel, would there be any difference in their results if they were doing keyword searching and accessing those 4XX fields in the authority file versus a browse search? Because I don't think many of our patrons are the power users we would all like them to be.
So I did a browse search by just clicking on a heading. Basically, it wasn't the correct heading, but I just deleted what I didn't want. And then this comes up. Gulf of Mexico has Sea, America, Gulf of. And if I click on Gulf of America, it just has all of the listings for the headings for Gulf of America. So if they were doing a keyword search, so would you mean like just doing it from the main search box and typing in like Gulf of America or Gulf of Mexico?
Probably, I was thinking from that screen, Gulf of Mexico, just because our average user, and maybe it's just McHenry's average user, they're more used to a Google type search. You go up to the screen, you enter your terms in a box, and you get hits. And they may not all be relevant hits.
Yeah, it's coming up as if I type in Gulf of Mexico, it comes up as Grapes of Wrath and Other Writings as the first one for being most popular because the word of is in it. So here's one from Gulf of Mexico. So I think the keyword headings or the keyword search would just search like all fields and wouldn't necessarily require the see alsos to be in the records. So if it were in the title, 520, I saw that Jamie had a comment that he suggested adding the previous terms to the 520 or elsewhere in the record to make sure that they're there. Oh, well, let's see, there's a picture. Looks like Ross posted a picture of subjects, which was for searching for Burma, and that had these subjects linked in the facets. I can't see this other picture very well, but it looks like it's a browse search. So that's the browse headings for Gulf of Mexico.
Our patrons are exactly what Kathy describes. They're just going to go in and do a keyword search like it's Google.
Right.
So I just limited to Palatine materials, and I did a keyword search for Gulf of Mexico, and then I did a keyword search for Gulf of America, and just like picking a couple of titles. Like I saw the movie Deepwater Horizon that showed up in the Gulf of America search, but not in the Gulf of Mexico search. So I think potentially there's going to be things missing depending on what you use as a keyword. And I think it would be more efficient to add those 691 fields to everything that has the Gulf of America subject heading, rather than trying to make sure Gulf of Mexico is in the keywords somewhere. Unless there's, a better way to do that.
So the one that didn't come up, Adrian, did you said did that come up when you only searched for Gulf of Mexico but not Gulf of America?
Movie Deepwater Horizon, the Mark Wahlberg one, not the documentary, that came up for Gulf of America, but not Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, okay.
I think for me now, one of the bigger issues might be if we were to lose access to something because we didn't have at least keywords in the bib record or a 691 to add with what patrons are searching for.
Yeah, I think I feel like
Okay,
if we're just relying on keywords, we're going to be missing a lot.
Rachel, can you hear me any better now?
I
It's
think
Jamie
so.
again.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try this. Is this adding the 691 something that CCS would be managing, like with the illegal aliens headings, or is this something that the catalogers would need to be doing?
I would say that we could initially bulk add it to the records that we would want to add it to, but going forward, anything that would need it would potentially need to be added by the catalogers if they want to add it immediately. Otherwise, we'd be able to include it in what Backstage does periodically to our records, but it could potentially be missing for a while. I don't know how important that would be given the small amount of searches that have been happening, but it would be without it for a few months potentially.
Okay, if it's something that could be done by Backstage automatically kind of later, then yeah, I wouldn't see an issue with using the 691s.
So I think Adrian's example is a good one that would justify adding it, but there have been a small amount of searches. So given those examples, do you feel you want to continue with this motion and bring these additional examples to CAM to bring it back at the next meeting, or not continue to pursue it anymore?
From the patron access point of view, I think that we should pursue it, but I will commit to whatever decision the group makes.
I agree with Kathy. I do think it's worthwhile, but I'm wondering if we've answered the question about the other subject headings as much. I don't know if there's other examples besides Burma and Myanmar, but I don't know if that discrepancy would still be a concern for CAM.
And we're also considering doing the same thing for Mount Denali, Mount McKinley as well, correct? The 691 as part of
Yes.
this same, yeah. I agree from the patron standpoint. It's worth pursuing.
Okay. From my understanding about there's a political difference with the situation in Myanmar, that a lot of the citizens of that country who do live in the United States politically choose to go by Burma because they personally don't recognize the name change of the country. So I do understand that sticking with Burma wouldn't be so much of a problem for those that come from that country that still want to do research into it. But it might be confusing for students who are unaware of the situation. So I think it's a bit of a different case, too. So do you feel that this needs to be made as secondary motion now, or just brought back to CAM to see if they're interested? Or actually, this wasn't a motion at the previous meeting, it was just a discussion, and then Rebecca said it was okay for CAM to vote on it.
I'd be happy with leaving it as we bring it back to CAM and let them decide whether or not they want to make a motion rather than making one for them.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on to the next agenda item. One moment, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so the next agenda item is the review of the Catalogers Wiki pages. So I'm going to click on them and go through each one. And if you have any suggestions for improving that page, please let me know. So some of these are pretty small. And the first one is country of production. Are there any potential changes or feedback on this page, something that was potentially confusing or something that needs to be updated that you may have noticed?
I think I'm unclear on what the local practice is, because that is the purpose of these pages, right? Is like primarily if it deviates from standard practice. So I think I'm unclear. Is it that we're requiring the 257 and it's not required, or?
Let's see. So if there's a difference from local practice word, it should be on this bibliographic input standards page in the chart. So 257. So yes, so it's considered CCS core for video recordings only. So that means it's not considered RDA core. And adding it is considered a local practice.
So what is the purpose of requiring it locally? Like what effect does it have if we add it or don't add it? Because
Rachel? Oh,
sorry.
Jamie?
no, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say I could give a little bit of background. So we required this back then because maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, we used to have like 655s for like motion pictures German or motion pictures French. And that's how someone could search for French movies. We stopped using those genre headings. And so we needed some way that somebody could still search for French movies. And so we decided to require the 257 field instead. Yeah, it's not something that users would be able to use necessarily in the pack, but staff could use that. And I think maybe in a previous pack, we were able to search by the 257, if I remember correctly. But anyway, that's kind of why, just so people could search for movies by country of origin.
So maybe it would be useful to add some of the background to it. Of why we consider it core.
I think that would be helpful, Rachel, because I'm just looking at it and I'm like, I don't understand why this is required. But yeah, once Jamie explained, I was like, okay, well that explains it.
Okay,
Yeah, and
great.
if we could add somehow the fact that it is core, because that's not clear to me from this page. It's just this page seems to just be describing kind of what the 257 is, and if maybe there was a way to make it more clear that it's required, or that would be helpful. But I don't know that if we've done that for other pages that we've already reviewed, so that.
I haven't gone through the list of what's core to add it into the pages, but that's a good idea. Something I could do if there's any downtime and I don't have much work to do. I'll add that to my list. Is there anything else on country of production? Okay, so the next one on the list is leading local holdings records from WorldCat. So I added a question to the agenda. This page looks really old and outdated. Is this something we need to keep? Because at this point, OCLC can work with the library doing a streamlined holdings update to delete any of the local holdings records in connection. Okay, if there are no other comments or no comments on this, I can just leave it as is.
Rachel,
Yeah.
given that all of these screens really are from Connection, and what I'm seeing here is that this is the web-based connection that's no longer
Right, it is
supported.
the web-based one.
If we're going to leave this in here, then having the statement, while our local holdings records are normally automatically deleted from WorldCat and I would suggest changing the mark of quality to a
Right.
non-vendor specific term. When your library's regular holdings are deleted, there may be times when you need to manually delete LHRs. To delete them and then refer them to like an OCLC page where they talk about doing that, because I don't remember seeing the ability to do that through the Connection client, and
Okay.
I've not worked with their new web-based record manager to know what that entails if it's there.
Yeah, I can do that. So the next one is a brief page on deleting the last copy of a serial. Given it's just one sentence, it's one of those things that I was thinking could be removed and then just added to the page on the CCS website on title changes. So that has title changes.
Because it's just one sentence. I don't think we need a page
Yeah.
specifically for that, but
Okay.
my opinion.
Rachel, do we have anything else in the wiki pertaining to cataloging of serial records that's independent of what's on the CCS website?
There is. So here's the category. Another category is for serials. Let's see, besides the call number analytics, there is this one on closing serial records that's somewhat related, but I believe that one was just on canceling a subscription. Oh, that's for when there's just one last copy. So that's something that could be moved to closing serial records or just to the CCS webpage that has the other information on canceled publications. Or not canceled publications, canceled serials, I should say.
Well, that makes sense to me. I can tell you in training, I have all of my catalogers start with the wiki. So whereas I don't want a full page, I just want a reference from somewhere to see this. So kind of like a see also to where we're putting this information.
One other option I've thought of too is moving this information on this page also to the wiki. So this is information on how to handle magazine changes in the title when they're no longer being published and when they're canceled.
For
I like that
myself, I
idea.
think I'm more likely to check the wiki
Okay.
if there's something I've forgotten how to do. But obviously the training pages are people do use those. So I don't know, maybe there's a way to just combine them in the wiki. So it's a little more concise.
Or maybe even
Yeah, I
if
can
it's
do
like
that.
a periodicals landing page for information on title changes, cease publications, and cancellations, see this CCS training page for information
Yeah.
on link and click here.
That makes sense. I can do that. The next one is addition. So, is there any information that needs to be updated on the addition page?
Are we still combining any 250s into a single 250? So if in OCLC it was looking at the example here, unabridged, revised edition, those would be in two separate 250s. Would we still be combining them into a single for Polaris?
Yes, that's required because the pack only displays one. How our future discovery layer will work is not something we know yet. So once that decision is made and we start reviewing how the records display, it's something that we could revisit.
Rachel, what about Wonder Books and Vox Books? Because isn't there an edition for that? I know it's on their separate page,
It's
but
on their page, yeah.
if somebody isn't looking for it and they're just looking at editions, I mean, just mentioning that they mention it there.
Yeah, I could add some of these Wonder Books and Vox Books editions to that page too as examples.
I think that'll be helpful because if somebody doesn't know to go to one place, that'll be on both pages.
Yeah, I can do that.
Great idea, Kim.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on edition statements? Okay, the next one is electronic location and access. So this is basically on the 856 field and which ones that should be added or retained or deleted.
I have also seen online versions in the 776 field. Does that do something different, or should that field be included on this page as well?
I don't think we have anything in the wiki on that field. I think that could be something that could be added to it. Have we had any discussions on that field previously?
We've not, but I've seen it in records that are imported from OCLC. And I think maybe people are just unclear about whether to keep it or not.
And those are for other versions, like the online version, when it's a print book, or is that something else?
I think the way it's labeled is online version.
Okay.
But admittedly, I haven't investigated it. I haven't tried to go in and click and see what it looks like.
In bib formats and standards, they call the 776 field the additional physical form entry. So then they do have coding for print version, online version, and then one where you specify the version yourself.
Does it include a URL?
Um,
I think usually I've just seen like an ISBN for the other version.
yeah, because the examples that they're giving in here show online version and then author, title information, edition information, publisher information, but no URLs, and then a corresponding OCLC number. So it looks like that 776 is referencing other records in OCLC, not a direct link to that external resource.
Okay, that makes more sense, that it's different from the 856. Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel, I asked you about that a couple months ago because in the print material, when we run the macro, we remove the ISBN for any e-records or any e-reference. And in the print materials, it stays in there, the online. So I have been removing it because it's non-print material related and we're already removing the
Right.
ISBN. So that was our previous discussion on this 776.
Right. I don't think this would go on the electronic location and access page. I think this should just stick with 856. But if you want a page or some information on the 776 in the wiki, that we could probably add that to the next agenda, so you can do some research into it and see what you think should be included in the wiki on it.
Yeah, maybe it's appropriate for a separate page with like the ebook ISBN information kind of combined with it. Maybe that would be helpful.
Is it something that you tend to leave in, Adrian, or do you think it should be removed?
The field itself,
Yeah.
I usually remove it, but then like I said, I've seen it in records in our catalog, so there's always kind of a question mark, like, oh, should I be removing it or should I leave it in?
Okay. We can do some more research for the next meeting to see if we want to include that in the wiki or have any guidance on it at all. Let's move on to the next topic.
Rachel, before we
Oh,
move
yes.
on, just a question on whatever links we're putting out in the 856 fields. Is there a mechanism whereby they're periodically tested for accuracy so that we're not leaving incorrect links in a record or obsolete links in a record?
No, the only time that someone may test it, I think, is if we're working on creating new resource entities and we want to make sure that those specific ones work. But we don't actually take a look at the other 856s that are in there and test them. So that would be up to the cataloger to do. Okay, so the next page is on the encoding level 3 records as preliminary data records. Are there any suggestions on this page? I was wondering if it should be potentially just moved to a separate PDR page or if it's helpful as a separate page.
For me, that would depend on who's actually doing the work. If it's going to be acquisition staff, then on a single PDR page or from that single PDR page, refer them to here if this is their workflow. If it's a cataloger, I don't know if they would be starting on that page because the workflow may be different in what they're doing.
I think it's possible you could just have this information on a PDR page and you could say, to use 100 or 1XX for authors and not 720. And for publication information, make sure it's included in the 264. That's basically what's on this page, I think.
Yeah, that and the link to the macro. Or maybe this would be more appropriate to be on the importing preliminary data records from connection page. Because if we're finding a level 3 record, we're searching in connection.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I'll take a look at that and see if I can add that to the other page. And the last one is fixing incorrect or obsolete serial records. Let's see. I don't know how often this happens because it's rare that we have to bring in new serial records. It seems like it's just like general communication guidelines. Um, and making sure that the correct records are linked. Are there any suggestions on updating this or changing it?
I don't have any.
Okay, great. Let's just move on to the next thing on the agenda. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda was is OLAC's best practices for cataloging digital media storage devices. So this was produced recently, and I think it's pretty timely because recently there have been some people that have asked me if there are any guidelines on Tonys. So it's a long document, but I did ask you to take a look at pages 11 and 12, just familiarize yourself with what's in the document, and was wondering if anyone had any suggestions on how we can review this throughout the year and identify if there's anything that we need to add to the wiki, any new guidelines on new formats like Tony's and so forth.
We're cataloging a lot of the story dream machines. I don't know if anyone's doing those with the little books that look like books with their cartridge, and they cross the, both sides because they have audio book on there. They're actually reading the book as well as they project the image of the pages of the book. So you might want to consider adding that one. It's kind of a combination of Wonder Book, I guess, with Box Book.
So were you calling them story dream?
Story Dream Machine. They're made
Story
by
dream.
Story Dream Machine, isn't that right? I'm sorry. It's a toy, but it comes, we have the item, the Story of Dream Machine, and then we are also cataloging all the little, much like the Tonys, there's the Tony box and there's the Tony figures, and this is the pieces that can go into it. We're mostly doing them as kits right now because so we're including audio storybook, and sometimes there's songs. We include songs as well, sound recordings for children, and also we're including juvenile fiction because it is like fiction books as well.
Okay. So besides that and Tony's, are there any other new formats that you've been encountering?
There's also the Yoto box,
Yodo.
YOTO.
I see that one on here. Storage cards, micro SD, slot music, Yodo, 20 bucks on page 12 of the
Oh,
document.
thank you. Didn't see that.
Okay, so I think for reviewing this, I'll take a look at some of the records that we have that are existing and see if I can identify what pages that we should focus on in the best practices. And from there, before the next meeting, you can take some time to review those and see if you have any ideas for guidelines for that format that we may need. Are there any other suggestions on working with this new best practices document? Okay, so the next thing on the agenda, I think it was something that Jamie suggested or pointed out that the 092 has been used for call numbers and consistently for video games, but it could be potentially useful when searching in LEAP in the call number field so that staff can identify which record belongs to which format. So I know he had some suggestions potentially on just standardizing it so that it looks like it would be useful. So one option would be to just standardize it by using the same format as the 753 tag. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on whether this should be something that Scrap should recommend as a local practice, or something that should just not be required, but could potentially just be pointed out as something that could be useful for staff to try to do if they want to.
I definitely think we should recommend this. I think it makes selecting the correct record so much easier. Don't we already have something like this in place for the preliminary records? I think my colleague requested this would have gone to the acquisitions committee, but I think
Right.
they add that information, I don't know, somewhere in that record. So maybe we just keep that format. I think
They do that in parentheses, like just for the PDR records. So that's not something that would still be added to the call number necessarily, because that's also removed.
sorry, what I'm saying is so in the it's 753, right?
Yes.
Isn't isn't it spelled out in the 753 as like PlayStation and not like PS5, right?
Yeah, it is.
And I think the records that exist that currently make use of the 092 fields, I think most of them are formatted like PS5, PS4. I don't think they're spelled out. So maybe like that's the format that we stick with rather than having to go back and change records that already have that field.
I agree with what Adrian was saying about using the form that people are going to be used to, like the PS5, PS4 Switch 2, rather than Nintendo Switch 2. I have a question though regarding like in the bibliographic record display or also in the linked bibliographic records on your purchase order display, is there a hierarchy of what displays in the call number field? Because if it's a PDR, it'll say preliminary data or some version of that. If it's fully cataloged and there's a value in the 082, it'll list that call number from the 082. If there's something in the 092, it'll list that as well. But does it have a, if this isn't present, use this, if this isn't present, use that kind of hierarchy?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that and see.
Because I like the idea of adding the 092, but not to PDRs, because I'm thinking of this from that acquisition standpoint, that it might be helpful for them to be able to see that it's a PDR rather than having. So I'm trying to remember what the receiving screen looks like, because I've just pulled up one of our purchase orders that hasn't been fully received yet, and went to the link bib records. So I'm not actually in the acquisitions attempting to receive something, so I don't have that context.
So I did just check on one that had an 082 already, because I guess a lot of places use a 794 number for their video games in 082. And if there is an 082, it looks like that is preferred for displaying. So, adding the 092 then wouldn't actually display. So I guess this would need a little bit of research as far as whether to use another field for this, and if so, should we use 092 or maybe 099? I don't know.
Or maybe if we're using an 092, remove the 082 for video game.
I would, as the person who kind of brought this up in the first place, I think, hate to add a new requirement for people. Like, I wouldn't want to make this too complicated because, of course, this does not display to the public. We're just talking about staff and leave. So I wouldn't want to make, a lot more work for people.
I fully agree. I also think attempting to add a platform qualifier in the title field, whereas that may be helpful for LEAP, it's against national practice, and whenever we recommend to go against national practice, there's a lot of pushback, because then that is a lot of extra work for cataloging staff to then do this extra bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to require it, but I do think that if it's something that we recommend or at least offer as an option, I think there are lots of people who will add it in as they see fit, as it's needed, just because it's helpful for their colleagues. I know that I would.
Would there be a way to specify a hierarchy for what displays in that field, so that if it's picking between the 082, the 092, the 099, so that there's a determination? Because if I'm going to put the trouble of putting in an 092 that won't display because there's an 082, then it's not really worth my time and effort.
Or maybe
Yeah,
we
I can
could
do some
say,
research.
if we did want to point this out to people that it's available, just like you suggested, Kathy, maybe just use in the 082, replace the DUI with PS5 and use the 082 for this purpose.
So then maybe then put the 082 information in an 092?
I mean, I guess if you wanted to, I don't know that it's particularly helpful, because we're talking about the bib, of course. People can use whatever they want in their own call numbers. I don't know if we need
Absolutely.
794 to show in the call number column.
I think that
Valid
the
point.
082 is not used by the patrons, since they'll be looking at the item records information in the pack. So whichever field we would put it in would just be for staff, and would be seen as a reference for staff. I think that it might get confusing if we were to move the DUI out of the 082, since that is supposed to be for the DUI. So I would suggest using something different than DUI for the platform information, either 092 or 099. Since those are meant for local numbers.
I'll admit that if I'm doing a bib search on something like a vague term because I have a title of a book that my selectors are telling me to put in a specific Dewey, I will sometimes sort by that call number field to try to narrow down my search, because then I can at least see if my title is in there, if that makes sense.
So I can do some research and write a possible statement up before the next meeting that could take all of these options into consideration. But one question I did have was for the formats where the name is a bit longer, like Nintendo Wii, Nintendo Wii U, Xbox One, and so forth. Would that just get shortened to Wii and Wii U, or Switch and Switch 2, or would that be something that you'd want like the full word Nintendo in it?
I think the shorter would be preferable. PS5.
Okay.
How about like a compromise between the two, whatever we would be using as the transcribed edition statement? Would that make sense?
Yeah, that was my thought too, initially. Just use the same format.
Okay. Okay, I'll have that ready for the next meeting. Is there anything else that we need to talk about before we end today? All right. Oh, were you going to say something, Kathy?
I was just going to ask, in terms of responses to the last round of wiki updates, did you have a deadline you wanted that back by?
The ones that we discussed today, you mean?
No, the ones from last time, because I was catching up on my scrap emails and saw that there was updates in an email you sent back in June, and since I had been rotating off of scrap, didn't think to look at them. So I'm looking for when do you want feedback by, or if any of the new members want to take a look at them and weigh in.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go back and take a look at that email again. Can you forward it to me to remind me which email that is?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And I'll get back to you on that. If it's something we need to talk about, I can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Okay, great. We can go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and I will see you at the next one. Have a good day.